What's going on, everybody? It's Burko back with the second part of my 2020 rap album tier list. Gonna keep this intro short. You all know how tier lists work. I rank man from bad, mid, good, great, amazing to perfect. If you haven't seen the first part of the tier list, make sure you go check that video out now. Here's what the tier list currently looks like, and just a reminder, it's all my opinion, so don't get upset seeing your favourite album down so low. And without further ado, let's just get straight back into the list. The more I listen to I Lay Down My Life For You by JPEGMAFIA, the more I'm convinced that it might be his best album. For me, this cements JPEG currently as the best producer in the world, with another masterclass of abstract sampling in a hip-hop album. At the same time as being JPEG's most personal and introspective album, it also happens to be his most commercially accessible in my opinion. You've got tracks like I Recovered From This, New Black History of Vince Staples, Loop It and Leave It, and for me two of the best songs of the decade so far, and Either On or Off the Drugs and Ex-Military, sensational. JPEG is an artist who seems to only be getting better and better with each project, and this album is going in the amazing tier. Moving on now, we've got the greatest of all time, Nas, coming up to us with the King's Disease trilogy. We'll start with the first, releasing in 2020. It was a great return to form for Nas. Not to say that his pen game ever dropped off, but some previous albums from him somewhat lacked that impact that albums post-Nostradamus had, like Godson and Stillmatic. This is the first full-length link-up between Nas and Hit-Boy, and while I don't think it's the best in the series, they're a match made in heaven from the start. Songs like Car 85 with Charlie Wilson, 27 Summers, Till the War Is Won with Lil Durk, Full Circle with The Firm, and The Cure are still in my rotation. Overall, a great album, and I'm glad it finally earned the best to ever do it its first Grammy. Next came King's Disease 2, again fully produced by Hit-Boy, and this is an excellent listen from start to finish, and in my opinion the best album that the pair have made together. Even by just looking at the track list, you can tell it's on another level compared to the first album, with legends on the guest list like Eminem and Lauryn Hill. Honestly, there isn't a single miss throughout this whole track list, but I guess if I had to pick some songs in particular to be the best, it would be this whole run from Store Run to Brunch on Sundays with Blast, but also shout outs to The Pressure with Don Toliver and Rare. If there was ever a conversation about who the GOAT is in rap, Nas ended it here with this album. Nobody in hip hop has had the longevity like he has had. This album is amazing. Finally, we've got KD3, this time an entirely featureless track run, but that doesn't make a difference to the musical quality, because with this duo, you know what you're going to get. Fantastic verses from Nas, accompanied by excellent modernised production from Hit-Boy. Tracks like Ghetto Reporter, Michael and Quincy, Recession Proof, Once a Man, Twice a Child, and Beef are some of my favourites off King's Disease 3. I've not really got much more to say about this one, it's just more of the same from an amazing duo making an amazing project. Now, I've opened up this tier list by talking about 4 fantastic albums, but it's time to talk about some duds for a bit. Yeah, I know, I've just got to do it. First off, the Pink Tape by Lil Uzi Vert. This project for me pretty much confirmed Uzi's fall off from a quality standpoint. This is dud after dud for 26 songs, and for a damn near hour and a half, there is no need for a Lil Uzi album to be that long. Minus the intro Flooded the Face, a couple of decent feature verses from Travis Scott, Don Toliver, and Snow Strippers are okay too, Uzi is giving me close to nothing with their performances. This is a bad album, and somehow not even Uzi's worst album of the decade. Last video I started off the list by talking about Vultures 2, and now it's time to talk about the first Vultures project between Kanye West and Ty Dolla $ign. While this album is nowhere near as bad as Vultures 2, it's still not exactly on a level with College Dropout, or even Free TC for that matter. While Ty is the absolute saving grace of this album, delivering some fantastic performances and vocals throughout, no cohesive vision for the album, obnoxious production throughout, and the absolute worst version of Kanye West in his career, pretty much confirmed Vultures was doomed from the start. There are some great songs on here though, my favourites being Back to Me with Freddie Gibbs, the feature of the year in my opinion. Stars is an amazing intro with great production from JPEGMAFIA. Burn, Do It, Beg Forgiveness, these are highlights, but this is mostly a mess. And when you've got tracks like Hood Rat on here, I'm pretty sure I'm legally required to call your album mid anyways. Up next, we've got everyone's favourite rapper, Lil Baby, with My Turn. Now I know what the consensus is around Lil Baby these days, but My Turn is regarded by many to be far and away his best work, and to me, I don't really care, it's Lil Baby. Baby is one of the most mediocre rappers I have ever heard in my life. When old heads say all trap music sounds the same, Lil Baby is the embodiment of what they mean. There's nothing unique about him in comparison to Thug, Future, or even Gunna. I guess if you want to call this Baby's best album yet, you can. There's good tracks on here like Emotionally Scarred and yeah, I genuinely do not care for My Turn or Lil Baby for that matter. It's going in the mid-tier, I don't care. And finally, to end off this string of bad albums, here comes Insano by Kid Cudi. Spoiler alert, the worst album on this tier list. God, this album is such a nothing burger of Cudi trying to mix everything popular in modern music into one album, making for a genuinely painful listening experience at points. I saw a review on Album of the Year that perfectly summed this project up in one sentence, and I quote, "Kanye drained 15 years of talent from Kid Cudi on Kids See Ghosts." Damn, he might be right. Insano features a lot of generic trap garbage, but the worst offenders off of this album are Willis from Nitro Mega, which might be the worst song I've ever heard in my life, and X and Cud, which is literally Orlando from 17 with Kid Cudi on. It was 2024 and they were still trying to milk as much of XXXTentacion as they could. What a disgrace. Insano was so far and away from what Cudi does best, giving some of the worst vocal performances since Speed Bullet to Heaven. This is awful, it's going in the bad tier. Right, finally I'm done talking about crap albums for this video, let's just get back to talking about the good ones. The Off-Season by J. Cole is a project that doesn't typically get talked about much anymore, at least from what I see, and while J. Cole isn't my favourite artist, it's a pretty decent album overall, I've got to say. It doesn't necessarily have the replay value of Cole's Mixtape Run or Forest Hills Drive or For Your Eyes Only for that matter, which is probably why it doesn't get talked about too much, but there are still great cuts on here. Applying Pressure being my favourite, with 95 South and Let Go of My Hand, I'd rate them pretty highly too. It's short, it's decent, but it's not really giving me much to necessarily think about, like if For Your Eyes Only did. If you can't already tell, that is my favourite J. Cole album, and I'm not saying everything has to be a conceptual masterpiece, but I like reasons to go back to albums, and honestly the Off-Season just doesn't really give me much to go back to. Still though, it's pretty decent and I'd give it a good rating. Probably the most surprising listen I had last year was for Logic's Ultra 85, like seriously this was a great album. Logic isn't an artist that I've ever really cared for, even through my Lyrical Miracle phase as a kid. Bobby Tarantino 2, Under Pressure and No Pressure, they're the only albums that I've actually listened to from him. They're alright and I recognise Logic is a great technical rapper, but he just doesn't really make music that grips me. But Ultra 85 is genuinely really good. It follows a pretty fun narrative of two space explorers on a mission to save humanity from extinction. Songs like Antidote with Z Loopers, For Forever, Fear and Favela are damn good, and Paul Rodriguez being 9 minutes of Logic spitting straight heat, one of the best performances on a track from last year. Overall, not something I've gone back to a whole lot, but this is great and probably the best Logic album I've personally ever heard. In 2022, Denzel Curry delivered his magnum opus with Melt My Eyes, See Your Future, an album that perfectly showcases Denzel's level of artistry and introspection. The project marks a departure from the raw aggression that defined much of Curry's earlier work in Imperial and Taboo, favouring a more thoughtful, jazz-inspired soundscape that explores themes of vulnerability, mental health and growth. Tracks like Walkin', Troubles with T-Pain, Melt Session 1, X-Wing and Worst Comes to Worst stand out as some of the best songs in Denzel's career, blending supreme lyricism with the smoothest production I've heard in years, honestly. With this project, Denzel proved his versatility, and not only is this his most mature album, but it's also one of the best rap albums of the decade in my opinion. An amazing album, no question about it. Griselda have been on an absolute tear this decade, with Westside Gunn's Pray for Paris being at the forefront of that, turning into an instant classic. Luxurious production from the likes of Uncle Al, Primo, Conductor and Derringer all helped put together soulful, sample-heavy beats that fit Gunn's signature charisma like a glove. Each track feels like it was curated in an art gallery, making the cover pretty fitting. Highlights include 327 with Tyler the Creator and Joey Badass, Eurostep, Sean vs Flair, 500 Ounces with Freddie Gibbs and Rock Marciano, and my personal favourite, George Bondo, which hits like a sledgehammer with Conway and Benny giving stellar verses. What sets this project apart is Gunn's ability to balance a grimy aesthetic with pure energy. Pray for Paris is Westside Gunn at his absolute peak, sitting proudly in the amazing tier. What happens when you combine one of the best rappers of all time with one of the best producers of all time together? Well, you get Alfredo, a modern day masterpiece from Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist. This album is the epitome of synergy between rapper and producer, with Al's minimalist, sample-heavy production allowing Freddie to shine on every single track. There's not a single skip here. You've got something to rap about with Tyler, Frank Lucas with Benny the Butcher, God is Perfect, Scotty Beam with Rick Ross, and the absolutely gorgeous 1985 intro, probably the only Freddie Gibbs song to make me cry. That instrumental is perfection. Alfredo was concise yet impactful, every bar, beat and transition perfectly placed. Gibbs and Alchemist didn't just make an album, they created a timeless piece of art. It's going in the amazing tier and it's probably the closest album to perfect tier that I've ranked so far. If you weren't in the hip hop space during the summer of 2021, you missed out on the incredible event that was Kanye West's Donda rollout, and for that I pity you. Going back to talk about Kanye West now, Donda manages to be one of his most ambitious projects to date, with its sprawling 27 track runtime. Yes, it is far too bloated and long. The album blends gospel and experimental production with mixes of drill and industrial beats together in a way that only Kanye could pull off. This album really is a mix of both the best and worst material Kanye has ever put out. First the worst, OK, God Breathe, Tell the Vision are rubbish, but then you look at tracks like Jail with Hova, Hurricane with The Weeknd and Lil Baby, yes, the same Lil Baby, Off the Grid with Carti and Fivio Foreign, Heaven and Hell, Jonah with Vori and Lil Durk, the storytelling of Jesus Lord with J Electronica, Pure Souls of a Prime Roddy Ricch, and genuinely one of the most beautiful songs of all time. For me, absolutely no question about it, the best song of the 2020s in Life of the Party with Andre 3000, a bone-chilling collaboration between two all-time greats that reduces me to tears 9 times times out of 10 listening to it. That said, the album's length and pretty major inconsistency prevent it from reaching the heights of Kanye's earlier classics, with a lot of features on here also outshining Kanye pretty heavily. Still though, Donda is a bold, ambitious spectacle of an album that will forever have a special place in my heart just for the event of it coming out, and it earns a spot in the great tier. Finally, to end this part of the tier list off, we've got Metro Boomin's second solo studio album outing in Heroes and Villains, a typical Metro masterclass in track production. If I had to compare this album's atmosphere to a movie, it would be The Dark Knight, with every track hitting like a cinematic set piece. The superhero theme and also Lucius Fox rocking up again does help quite a bit. Honestly, take your pick for the best track on here. I know my personal favourite is Young Thug's Metro Spider, one of the best performances of the decade so far. Then you've also got Superheroes with featuring Chris Brown, Too Many Nights with featuring Don Toliver, Trance from Travis and Thugger, Feel the Fire by A$AP Rocky and The Late Takeoff. It's the definition of banger after banger. While it doesn't reinvent the wheel, Heroes and Villains is a polished and thoroughly enjoyable project, firmly landing in the great tier. That's going to do it for the second part of my 2020s rap album tier list video. If you want to see some more, then make sure to leave a like and comment which albums you want to see me rank next. Remember, this is all just my opinion, so don't get too upset. Make sure you leave your picks in the comments below. And yeah, that's all I've really got to say. If you watched to the end, thank you. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.